All right, Vince, Indiana, thanks so much for coming on, speaking about your experience in my Polaris coaching program. I would love for you to just introduce the audience a little bit about yourself and what you were going through uh, before you joined the program.
Sure. Yeah, so I'm Vince. I've been struggling the past 3 years with some really bad injuries. I had five partial tears, both of my shoulders and my left elbow, and I've had a crazy experience of trying a bunch of therapy. And the last thing that I tried was stem cells, and it's been a very good process. But I needed something that would take me to the next level without having to go out and physically go somewhere all the time, and something that I could do every day. Um, and obviously, I was introduced to you, Nick. And at the beginning, I can honestly say I knew I'm the type of person who's very socially anxious and always on edge. And so the process of learning the vortex method and all that really helped. And I can see from the very beginning using my Oura Ring, my sleeping patterns and my stress. And I can definitely tell now where my stress is and where I should be, especially when it comes to quality of sleep and making sure I'm going to bed early. But really, when it comes to the breath work, being able to go throughout those days when you're at those peak moments when you're like, oh shoot, like I'm stressed out, go and do the vortex method or go do some breath work in general. And that's really going to help chill you out, which changes your day completely.
Mm. Yeah, that's really an awesome part of working with you is we got to see the changes in the Aura Ring from the beginning to now, and I'll even post a screenshot here. Um, what was there a specific aspect of this program that you felt really made a difference? And I know that for the audience overall, like Vince has had been dealing with a lot of these injuries, but also dealing with this like tightly wound nervous system. What would you say, what aspect of this program helped you go from that tightly wound sympathetic overdrive nervous system,
Mhm.
high stress environment in your workplace every day, to where you are now? Was there anything specific that helped?
Well, I think the key is the breath work. But what I notice is in social situations and in day-to-day life, we're talking about like I do a lot of mobility every day. I am a lot more relaxed. Like I can tell, I feel like my muscles are generally more relaxed. And in social situations, I feel more relaxed. And especially when it comes to like how you process your thoughts. Like if anyone sees this and they're like, oh yeah, I get socially anxious as well. Well, I am very different than I was before. And maybe from the outside perspective, some people would be able to tell if they're really paying attention. But I mean, just living it, someone who's always struggled with that, I'm a lot more relaxed. I'm not really worried about I would say, outside distractions as I was before. So it's definitely a game changer, and I will continue to do it. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's something that you really applied yourself to was the consistency of training that nervous system. And like we talked about on the call earlier, the window of tolerance, making that ceiling higher, making the floor lower. So you're strengthening your rest and digest system, you're
Mhm.
strengthening your fight or flight system. And I think you've done that in a very powerful way, which is expediting the healing of your muscle tendons, your tissues, that kind of stuff from a systemic level. So thank you for that. And what, if anything, stood out to you about how I approached the situation and coached you?
Hmm. That's a good question. Um,
You spent like a lot of money on health, on other coaches, on that kind of stuff.
yeah.
What was maybe something that you felt was different that helped you with this approach?
Well, one, I genuinely felt, and that's why I wanted to go to this program, is because I felt like you genuinely cared. One, and also like, setting the standards of like, hey, this is what we want to go for, and applying it now. We're not applying it in a month or 6 months. We're doing it now. And you reaching out saying, hey, did you do this? How's this changing? I really appreciate that. So I would say the personal touch of being able to work with you and on the fly, hey, this is what I experienced. Like, where are you at? Oh, okay, I can see there's a big gap there. What do I need to start shooting for? And like, if I'm not there yet, how do I take out the distraction so I can get there through time and not as be as anxious with that progression? Because, everyone wants to be there instantly, but that's not how the process works of anything. And
Mm.
anything worth doing is generally can be difficult. But breath work has been good. And like anything else, you plateau at times and some things are like at the very beginning going from 30 seconds release, 30 seconds to now a minute and 15, minute and 20 at my best, and 15-second breaths. Comparison to the top professional athletes, that's nothing, but comparison to where I was, it's a big difference. So yeah.
I mean, the pro athletes that I coach don't double their breath hold retention time.
Hmm.
That's in a month, which is what you've done, which,
Yeah,
in my opinion, one of the most important metrics of health. The longer you can hold your breath, the lower your resting heart rate, the lower
sure.
your HRV, all that kind of stuff. And so I think that what's been really cool is that Aura Ring and that seeing it from a data perspective, but then hearing stories from you um, about this new embodiment that you have and new presence and new way of being. And I would love, if you wouldn't mind, to speak a little about maybe even the story you told me earlier today about going out and what that experience was like and what it was, how it was different from what it might have been.
Hmm. So I talked about going to church. I was going to a worship service, and generally, I go to church sometimes by myself, sometimes with people. And the first thing, going to a big church, it's a lot of people. There's a lot of different thoughts. What is this person thinking about me? Do I look right? All these different thoughts flying through my head. Well, the past couple of weeks, I've noticed a dramatic change, perspective change, and distraction change. Like I don't really care. I just don't. I felt like I just told you before that I was able to stand in the middle of the room and communicate, reach out to some people that I knew in that time without feeling like, oh, do I need to check my phone a million times or run into the auditorium and sit down? I didn't feel that. Or even when I was in there, being able to just relax and be in that moment is so much better than really tightly wound, short conversations here, get out. Like it wasn't like that. It was very different. And so I'm interested to see like the next 3, 4, 5 months how that changes for me. Because as someone who claims, I'd say an introvert, I don't think that's how the dynamic was those past couple times. So I would say it's changing, which is actually changing the perspective of myself in a way. It's taking, oh, that was the old me, which I think is good. We need to be able to adapt and change. So for me to progress like that, especially for the short time frame, it's been cool.
Hmm.
So
I'm excited to see how it progresses over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months because with this much progress in 1 month, it's going to be pretty exciting. And I believe that this is the thing is breath work is work and you've been putting in the work. And so after a month, you're seeing these dramatic changes in how you interact and also this ability to see that, oh, me saying to myself that I'm tightly wound, that was like something I was identifying with that's now I've have more space from that identification. I'm also
mhm.
gaining space from the identifier of introvert. And when you're regulated, you can just be you're more yourself. You're more sitting in your truth in your seat of personal power in that present moment, in that breath. And when you slow your breathing down, you can operate in the world in a different way as you've been experiencing. And so, really, an amazing story that I wanted to have the audience hear because hearing that this morning versus seeing you in the beginning when we were working together was astounding and really quite night and day. And so, um, just one more question for the audience. If there's a high performer out there like yourself or someone dealing with an injury or a disease or something, um, that is unsure of joining my program, what would you say to them?
Even if you think you're good at rejuvenating yourself, if you're not doing breath work, I think you can do way better, especially with the vortex method. And if you're already consistent, like if you're like, oh, I know I'm going to dedicate myself to something if I'm going to do it, this would be something that's worth the time, especially because it's free. It's free to sit down on the couch, lay down on your bed, whatever you want to do, and do breath work. Especially you know what you should be doing. You're going to spend time with that person to say, hey, I see you're doing this. Like we talked about, like actually timing the breath, all these different things to really guide you. That's what I would say is, that's why it's worth it to me.
Hmm,
So,
amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's that's the beauty of breathwork is truly anyone can do it and you don't have to pay me. Like if I was to if someone was to go away and they're kind of unsure of whether to join the program, I still would be like, just be consistent. Just go do it and figure it out yourself. It's going
Hmm.
to take more time. You might mess
Sure.
up. You might almost kill yourself like I did a couple times. Ideally not. But that is the beautiful thing is I'm just selling some guidance along the way that can help someone like you expedite their path to
Yeah.
regulate parasympathetic in your power, work is going well, you're feeling healthy, you are accelerating your rate of healing, even though it might not manifest itself yet within this month. You had a pretty serious 5 tears in the shoulder. Um, so this is just one of those tools, one of those steps along the way in your healing journey that will and is accelerating yourself back to wholeness, completeness, healed, no injury in the shoulder, and regulated in the nervous system. And so, yeah, man, I've just, it's been an absolute pleasure working with you. I really appreciate you giving some words out to my audience about your experience with the program. I don't know if there's any final thoughts or words you may have.
Well, the last thing I want to say, because it just popped up in my head, like what did I struggle with the most? Or one of the things that I struggled with the most was also fear of re-injury, even just doing basic maneuvers. I think a lot of that fear is actually dissipated. It's gone to some degree. Obviously, there's still things in the weeds that sometimes want to nag at you. Um, but I would say for me, that fear loop that was created from the original injury has dissipated because it's I don't know. It just works. Doing that breath work, spending the time with it consistently, it changes, it reprograms the mind to relax and say, hey, well, you're in a safe place. It's okay to be here, you know. You can move and you're not going to do some damage, you know. And for me, at least, that was a game changer because being in a fear state all the time, even if you're healthy and you're fine, whatever, it's not good to live like that. And it's you're more prone to injury if you're an athlete or even just daily life. So,
Mm. Mm,
uh,
I love that. Yeah, it's healing is recovery, and he who recovers the best performs the best. That's peak performance. So, for you to be eliminating and dissolving the fear in your day to day, that's allowing you to stay in more parasympathetic. And rest and digest is where you're going to heal. You're never going to heal in sympathetic fight or flight. And so, that's
yeah,
the biggest shift that I've seen in you is like this overwhelm, fear of re-injury, upregulated nervous system. Now you've kind of like throttled back into parasympathetic, into patient, know what I'm doing in my space where my body's healing on a day-to-day basis. And I'm really excited because the doctors have a certain timeline on the injuries. I think that you're gonna be able to heal before they think you.
yeah,
And that's always a very cool feeling to walk into the doctor's office and be like, hey, this is actually where I'm at. You said it would be then, but it's now.
sure. Yeah. Well, I've even done stuff in the past week. Even actually yesterday, I did something with my PT who's in San Diego, and he's like, "Oh, you can do that. That's good." And so like minute things that like you don't necessarily notice, but someone else will notice. It's like, "Oh, okay, that's changed. And it's only been X amount of time." So be willing to test it out once, you know, actually pay attention to what, you know, the changes that are being made, even if they seem so small. You know,
Mm,
and being in your own body, sometimes you don't notice that
mm,
because you live, you know, obviously only in your own body. So you know, you only like one person to experience that. So maybe
mm.
even like I would say taking notes. That's something that I probably should do more when it comes to the minute changes that I see outside of our conversations, or just working with a PT. They'll notice things too, but I would say writing notes is probably something I should do.
Yeah, I mean, creating a list of all the evidence for the new belief, you can make a
Mm,
decision matrix chart where you have limiting belief in the left column, new decision in the middle column, and then on the right column is all the evidence supporting the new decision. So it's really hard to heal from my injury, or I'm afraid of getting injured again. I'm going to re-injure myself again. That's limiting belief. New belief is my body's healing perfectly. I'm healing really quickly. My body is so good at healing. Look at all the evidence. Oh, well, my PT said this last week and he was surprised I could do this. My resting heart rate's dropped by this percentage. My HRV's increased by this percentage. My resilience score on my Oura Ring is this now. On and on and on. You find all that evidence. And like we've been talking about on our calls, you train the reticular activating system to be focused on the side of the lawsuit in your life that is going to win the case, not lose the case. And I think you've done that beautifully. And it's been such a pleasure to see this transformation, this progression. And I wish you all the best. And I'm excited to remain in contact with you and in communication, and really grateful for you just saying some words to my audience about your experience and speaking your truth, because it helps me a lot spread my word and my reason for being. So I appreciate you, Vince. And yeah, that's all, folks.